Hey guys, subscribe for daily knife content. And if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got an interesting knife overview to share with you guys. This is the ever-elusive Spyderco Shaman Sprint Run in Micarta and Z-Wear PM. No, that's not a brand of cough medicine. That is a steel, and kind of a weird one. Not one that I was super familiar with, but I did learn about it. I'm going to share some information with you guys. This is not a full review. I've reviewed the Spyderco Shaman. I've had it in many different discussion topics. If you've been watching my channel, you probably know all about the Spyderco Shaman. If you want to check out those videos, get my thoughts on the Shaman design, you're welcome to do that. You can check it out in my Spyderco playlist or by typing in Metal Complex Spyderco Shaman. This was sent to me by @McSquirgle on Instagram. Please give him a follow. It's because of him, people like him, that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me. You can find a link for my Patreon right down in the description. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at @metal_complex. This is dimensionally just like any other Shaman. It's the only difference is that, it's the finish and the steel and the handle material. So weights and specs, they're all the same. I'll let you guys look that up. There's not really much of a reason for me to do that. This is in and out available, depending on when you're watching. Like, if you're watching this at the time that I upload it, then I've seen this pop in and out at some retailers, right? It can be frustratingly difficult to get a hold of. If you go and check eBay right now, I'm sure the prices are way jacked up because that's what people do. How do you get your hands on it? I'll provide links down below where they periodically pop up, but it's just one of those things where you kind of have to be quick. I don't really know how to offer that to you. If you're watching this way in the future, it might not be available at all. Today, I just wanted to kind of give you guys an overview of this knife and talk about Z-Wear. So this is a really good looking Shaman, and I think it spoke to a lot of people aesthetically. I love the Shaman. I think the Shaman design is awesome. As a user, I love the ergonomics. I actually really like using this knife. I've got one of my own in S30V in titanium. Of course, I love the compression lock, love the opening hole. It's very easy to manipulate. Knives are made in the United States, right, using phosphor bronze. I love that compression lock, right? If you're not familiar with Spyderco knives, I'll link those down below too. You can definitely get the regular Shaman right now, but something about the combination of the compression lock with the opening hole and how it translates in this particular design is very appealing. Of course, you have the benefit of the large fasteners and minimal hardware. You got a nice backspacer back here. There's just a lot of good going on with the Shaman, and I think the Micarta and the Z-Wear, the satin finish Z-Wear, was really appealing to people. This knife comes in at $225, which Spyderco's really been bumping their prices up, but as far as like a weird steel like Z-Wear, which is actually really great steel, we're going to talk about it, and the Sprint Run, the special version of it, it's kind of, I don't know if I really want to complain all that much, right? Might be a little bit overpriced, but it's not anything crazy. That's my opinion there. So, what the heck is Z-Wear? Well, Z-Wear has a very similar composition to CPM 3V. Very similar. It's got a few differences. I will provide a link down below where somebody who's much more qualified, Laren Thomas, has a good article from Knife Steel Nerds talking about the difference in toughness between Z-Wear and crew wear, and any other information I can provide down there that's going to give you guys more of the scientific part of it, because I'm not a professional, right? I'll let you guys read about that. Basically, Z-Wear is very similar in composition to CPM 3V, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. That steel is known for having very high toughness and pretty darn good edge retention and just ease of sharpening in general, but it's not stainless. Z-Wear is definitely not stainless, which I think is I was saying, like, why didn't they do a tumbled finish like the backspacer? Well, the backspacer is actually satin on it, but the pocket clip is tumbled. And I was thinking, man, this would look so cool if it would give it that complete vintage look if we did the Micarta and the tumbled pocket clip and the tumbled backspacer and the tumbled blade. All right, I'll get mine out so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about there. The tumbling just kind of gives it that kind of pre-worn look, and I just like it, right? So there you go. But anyways, the higher the polish on a steel, the better it resists corrosion on top of whatever the composition is. So, for example, if you have a composition that does not yield stainless qualities, if you polish it, right, a higher polish, is going to help resist corrosion. A tumbled finish or a bead blast finish or like a heavy acid wash, it leaves little pockets or pits, right? Varying sizes of pockets and pits that are all almost microscopic in the blade. I mean, that's what the little marks are. And they can be sort of, I guess, little teeny tiny moisture traps, right? So that makes sense to me. I guess that I can understand why I didn't do that. But anyways, so yeah, similar composition, except there's a couple of differences in the composition, which you can find down below. This actually achieves the same level of toughness with higher levels of hardness. And that's neat because, you know, oftentimes with higher hardness, you get a little bit better edge performance. So does that mean that it's all the way around better than 3V? Composition is a multi-directional teeter-totter. So when you add something in on one area, you do lose something in another area, right? That's why that information's down there, so that I don't say something that's incorrect, right? But that is interesting. I have very little experience using like steels in this, I don't want to call it a family, this area. This is ZAPP, Z-A-P-P, which is different than Crucible, who makes CPM 3V, right? I think a lot of people would kind of throw crewwear into this general area, which is probably why Laren Thomas did the article comparing the two. Crewwear is a different steel than Z-wear or 3V, but it is similar in some ways. The performance is kind of, you know, the kind of up or down. It's kind of like when we talk about steels like Rex 45 and K390 and Maximate. They're all up there in slightly different levels of toughness, corrosion resistance, edge retention, and hardness, right? But they're all kind of up there. That's kind of how I view the 3V, the 4V, the crewwear, and the Z-wear. There's a bunch of other ones, but that's kind of a general area of where this is. Does that translate well to the Shaman? Oh yeah, I think so. Look, S30V works just fine, but if I can get, you know, maybe some, you know, combine the ease of sharpening with it. I'm not saying that this is like absolutely the easiest thing to sharpen in the entire world, but steels like this, similar to this, I've found, me personally, I've had an easier time just with areas of the blade like not like S30V, when it's properly heat treated, I found can be a little bit chippy. So sometimes I prefer a steel that's got a little bit more toughness, and oftentimes what comes with that, if I'm trying to achieve, you know, or trying to get a steel with similar edge retention, again, not a professional, just a guy who uses his knives and likes knives, right? What comes with it is a lack of corrosion resistance, which out here in Kansas is not a big deal. My Maximate Para 3 is not coated, and it gets oiled up maybe once a month or two, and there's a slight patina on it. So I don't really care too much about corrosion resistance out here. I kind of want good balance between toughness, edge retention, and ease of sharpening. Those are the areas that I, you know, care about. So steels like 3V, crewwear, in this case the Z-wear PM, those are really appealing to me. Absolutely. I don't always need maximum toughness, but you know, something that's good, you know, from what I understand, to back up toughness, which is the edge, you know, the ability to the edge to resist fracturing or chipping under heavy pressure or impact, right? Something that backs that up is a more robust geometry. The geometry of the blade in combination with the heat treat, you know, alongside composition, that ultimately determines its performance. The Spyderco Shaman has a fairly robust geometry. A lot of people would say it's a very robust geometry. 140 thousandths or so on the spine. We've got a flat that carries out about 55% the length of the blade, and quite a bit of thickness carried out to the tip. There's quite a ways, you know, a lot of room to drop towards the edge, but the edge is not mega ultra thin. It's not open thin. It's not overly thick, right? It's not like, I mean, I've handled a lot of knives with way thicker geometry, but it is robust. So this is the type of knife where, you know, hard use is not determined by, you know, whether or not you can beat on the spine of the blade with a sledgehammer and get the lock to disengage. A lot of people just decide like whichever knife has the strongest lock means it's the most hard use. No, because a lot of these locks will still withstand natural human force under natural circumstances, right? So anything beyond that in a normal circumstances, what I consider that trivial. So sometimes, you know, other things like blade geometry, edge geometry, composition, all that will play a role in how the blade performs and how efficient it is, for what you're going to use it for. This is a rough and tumble setup, for sure. Micarta, in the setting that this knife was meant to be used in, it's going to get a little slimy. You're likely to come in contact with, moisture and stuff like that, and this is a knife that's going to patina over time. It's a knife that is going to kind of absorb that aged look and vintage look really, really well. And that's what I think is cool. I mean, you're going to have some discoloration in the micarta because it absorbs moisture and stuff like that. I think it's great that the clip is already tumbled, right? Blade's going to get marked up. And it's, like I said, it's going to patina. This knife is one of those that's really going to look good as it's been used. And it's also going to hold up really, really well. My Shaman, yeah, I don't baby this thing. This is definitely something that gets thrown around and beat on, and it's been jammed into a fence. It's definitely been used to pry wood away from other wood that it was nailed into, right? Well, some people will be like, that's not hard use. Unless you can take apart your lawnmower with your knife, you don't know what hard use is. All right, that's weird. Why wouldn't you just use, like, tools? but anyways, right, the knife is definitely one that can be abused a little bit. Obviously, don't do anything incredibly stupid with your knife. Use the appropriate tools. But if you're in a pinch and all you have is your Spyderco Shaman, I think this is going to do better in a lot of situations than other knives. And, it's cool. The Z-Wear, this is a high-performance steel. And for the role that it's meant to play, I think it's going to play that role really well. In fact, I think it couples super well with the Spyderco Shaman. I think that's a lot of the reason why people are so drawn to it. If you're really planning to have this is one of those Spyderco Shamans where I really can confidently say it's kind of an ultimate user Shaman. Now, if you live in an area where corrosion is going to be a problem, like if you're like, I live by the ocean, should I buy that? No, definitely not. LC200N is your friend. Your tungsten carbide, your dendritic cobalt, stuff like that. Your Van X. Those are friendly steels for you. Actually two of those aren't steels. Dendritic cobalt and tungsten carbide are not steel, but those are friendly materials for you because they cannot corrode, or if they can, it's very, very unlikely. It would be very difficult for it to corrode. But for people who live in areas like me, if you're going to go out and beat on it in kind of a dirty environment, right? You're not going to be in the friendliest environment for a knife. I think that this really would work well for you. I don't know that there's really a whole lot more that I can say. I do find this to be very attractive. A lot of people were wondering because when I got it, it wasn't centered, and the person who sent it in was like, I just am having the hardest time centering this thing. Is there anything that you can do to center it? I said, yeah, no problem. So we do have the blade centered now. The action is good. You can see there it's not completely, totally dropping, but it is swinging down like just a little bit of, I'm at an angle here. Just a little bit there will do it. And there's no blade play, which is fantastic. I will say this. I've noticed that knives using micarta, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. It's not specifically Spyderco. It's not specifically inexpensive knives or expensive knives. It's just micarta in general. For whatever reason, the blade is much more likely, if there's a variant of that knife, like if they make it in G10, in carbon fiber, and micarta, and then maybe a titanium variant, all the other variants seem to center okay, but the micarta versions are the ones that are most likely to be off center. I don't know if that's because micarta flexes a little bit, or as you put this, because if you guys have watched my video about centering, there's a pretty easy trick. You can type in metal complex, how to center your knife blade, and it should pull up. It's an easy trick, between loosening the pivot and the body screws and kind of tightening them back down in an order while holding the blade to one side. It worked just fine on this, right? But I don't know with micarta, I feel like I could infinitely screw in until it crushes or squishes the micarta underneath it. Does that mean micarta is not durable? No, it just means it's got some flex to it. You're not going to feel it on the Shaman because it's backed up by countersunk steel liners, but it does have it's got a little bit of give to it. So maybe that's why. Maybe it's a little bit, just creates kind of a loosey-goosey kind of, centering situation. If you end up paying a lot of money for a knife that's got micarta on it and the blade's not centered, don't fret. You can still center it. The knife's going to be fine over time. After that, if the pivot backs out, just use some blue Loctite. You'll be okay. But if you have a Spyderco Shaman in micarta and it's off center, you can use that trick and get that blade back to center, and it should work just fine. My Spyderco Shaman in titanium, think the titanium really holds things in place. So it's been fine. But yeah, I've been using the Spyderco Shaman for a long time. I've had this guy since the very early days of the channel, and it has been very, very dependable. These are, the standard version of the Shaman is a lot more expensive now, and I kind of recommend it through gritted teeth because it's frustrating that they're like $200 for this when it started off at $155, right? But it is what it is. This is still a recommendable knife, and I think the Z-Wear Shaman is probably one of, if not the coolest variants of this knife that have ever come out. I wish it was tumbled. I understand why it's not tumbled, but oh well. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it. I don't know that there's really a whole lot more I can say. I hope that this was informative or at least mildly entertaining. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.